We're here in Grand Canyon National Park in front of the largest forbidden zone in the park, 1,332 acres, the site of the 1956 crash between a TWA and United Airlines plane that killed all 128 people aboard. And it's laid out in plain sight from the Desert View viewpoint. This is the area described in the heavily redacted National Historic Landmark nomination document. It's also the most likely location of the secret Egyptian cave, if one actually exists, described in a 1909 Arizona newspaper article describing the alleged discoveries of explorer G.E. Kincaid. And I have a video about that. And it's reportedly the area where the black helicopters intercept anyone who dares to enter. Because I've made videos touching on this topic, a number of viewers have asked me, what about the black helicopters? The first point I want to make is that the people promoting these stories are never at the Grand Canyon. They're always in a studio somewhere making these claims. The next logical question is, why would the helicopters be black? I guess if they did their work at night, being black might be an asset. However, any unauthorized exploration of the Grand Canyon, especially bushwhacking in rough terrain or rappelling down cliffs, would likely be done in the light. And in an area where temperatures exceed 120 degrees in the summertime, a black helicopter would be painful to touch. It would make a lot more sense that the helicopters be white. But I guess black helicopters are just more dramatic. Now, an extension of this story is that the appearance of the black helicopters is preceded by the appearance of a white plane. That is dramatic. Maybe it was interjected for the contrast of black and white, salt and pepper, or maybe the narrator just happened to have a clip of a white plane in some canyon area. However, I've never seen a plane being used below the rim in Grand Canyon, ever. They're impractical because they can't land or take off in the canyon, and they can't deliver a payload effectively. Promoters of the black helicopter story say that no one may fly below the rim of Grand Canyon, but that's just not true. Commercial carriers are prohibited from flying below the rim of Grand Canyon, but NPS helicopters and authorized contractors fly below the rim regularly. In fact, with repairs to the Trans-Canyon Pipeline, below the rim helicopter flights are so frequent they've become annoying. However, viewers tell me the Y Files has videos of the black helicopters, so I watched. First, the narrator is sitting in a studio and seems to have no knowledge of the Grand Canyon. He produces a blurry image of a white plane flying in a muddy canyon, not what's behind me today. Then he offers an image of a helicopter in the sky. Again, no link to the Grand Canyon. If they worked a little bit harder, they could find plenty of images of helicopters in the Grand Canyon that they could misrepresent. Like maybe this one that's carrying supplies for the new water line is actually carrying away artifacts to hide in the vault of the Smithsonian. There's also an image online that allegedly shows Black Hawk helicopters landing at Grand Canyon Airport. Maybe the legend is morphing to refer to Black Hawks. First, the Grand Canyon Airport is not in Grand Canyon, it's in Tucson outside of the park. Second, the control tower in the video is square, while the control tower at Grand Canyon Airport is round. That video is not from Grand Canyon Airport. Perhaps somebody who's never visited the Grand Canyon imagines the Forbidden Zone is tucked away inaccessible in the deep canyon. But as you can see today, it's wide open and in plain sight. 1 million people visit this viewpoint every year, and almost all of them have a cell phone or a camera, yet not one genuine photo or video of the black helicopters exists. Doesn't that strike you as odd? But here's my point. The people who create and promote these stories are unfamiliar with the area. The Forbidden Zone was wide open before the air crash and remained open years thereafter. There are photos of curiosity seekers with the crash debris. Further, closed sites like Anasazi Bridge and Hopi Salt Mines were also visited regularly in years gone by. But no Egyptian caves were found and no helicopters were spotted. The helicopters weren't even imagined until recently. And the Forbidden Zone is not fenced, mapped, or even posted with warning signs. The park seems to rely solely on restricting information, like in the redacted document, and the threat of fines and criminal prosecution to enforce the rules. There are no fences in the forbidden zone. In fact, it's accessible via the Tanner and Beamer trails, as well as by rafting down the Colorado River. Now, do I think the area of the airline crash site should be closed? No, not at all. I guess the reason they closed it is respect for the deceased and to discourage curiosity seekers. But that crash happened 68 years ago. Any human remains are now gone. And if you want morbid, you can freely go to the Grand Canyon Cemetery and stand over 4 coffins containing the unidentified body parts of 29 crash victims. Although I don't think the park is hiding anything, I do think they administer it more for themselves than for the visitors. And I guess the fewer the visitors, the easier it is to administer. Other than water tanks and the like, the only area I'm aware of with fencing in the Grand Canyon is the site of the former Orphan uranium mine. There's an outer fence and an inner fence. Whether the area needs to be closed because of radiation contamination is ambiguous, but it's fenced off and signed. Now, I met a guy here about a year ago who was coming back through the fence. He told me he'd gone over both fences and had a look around. And do you know what happened to him? Absolutely nothing. There were no white planes, no black helicopters, no enforcement whatsoever. And that was in the middle of the day. The black helicopters are an attractive legend of the Grand Canyon, but there are no verifiable photos or videos of them, no credible accounts of seeing them, and no reason for them to exist. They are a myth. The people who create and promote these stories are sitting in a studio making good money. But the stories do not withstand rational scrutiny, no less real-life experience. There's no hidden Egyptian city in the Grand Canyon, and no black or Black Hawk helicopters defend the secret sites. These are childish fantasies. I think a lesson from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13:11, applies here. Quote, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things." There are serious matters in the world with which to be concerned. Black helicopters at the Grand Canyon are not one of them.